Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie, with a coffee today. A coffee and a bit of a headache, a little bit of a hangover. Not hangover exactly, but I had a little bit of wine. I went to a funeral this morning, and afterwards, the wake, had a little bit of wine, a little bit of vino, and I'm not very good at drinking in the day, but so I've then had to go for a nap, and I've literally just woke up about an hour ago. I got a little bit of a headache. So, but apart from that, I'm fine. Got a little bit of the sniffles. I'm in my pajamas because it's cold, and I've just literally woke up, and I thought, oh, I don't want to get dressed, and I thought I was going to go on the avatar, and I know, like, people say to me, and I prefer watching YouTube. If I'm watching someone on YouTube, it's better not to watch an avatar, isn't it? So I thought, oh, I'm just going to do it in my pajamas. I'm decent. So. Anyway, so I went to the funeral today. It was a beautiful service. It was very sad, obviously. And I've sort of come back, and I had a couple of twonks on the chat there. And I've just got rid of them. I'm not putting up with any crap. That's what I just thought. Life's too short to put up with twonks, isn't it? Like, you don't like my channel, don't come on my chat, don't watch my videos. I don't care. I'm not talking to you, like, I'm talking to any twonks that are watching. Just, do what Katie Hopkins says. Don't watch my videos. Don't come on my chat. I do not care. Life's too short. I don't care about you. I don't even know you. So why should I even care about what you think? So that's that, especially when I've just come back from a funeral from, somebody who's a nice person who wanted to be alive today. Think about this. I don't know if you've noticed. It's probably, I know that it's the same. It's in the UK. It's the same, and it's happening here in Spain. There's masks. Masks are sort of reappearing, aren't they? We've just had to start wearing masks again in hospitals, and at the doctors, but nowhere else yet. We don't have to wear masks anywhere else. At the pharmacy, when we go to the pharmacy, to the chemist, that's sort of started up again, and it's like gives you a feeling of dread, doesn't it? Because you just don't want to go back to that where you have to wear a mask all the time, even though, I mean, it's fair enough, some people like to wear a mask because they feel more secure with it, but all that it's like the funeral that I went to this morning. People weren't in masks, but of course there was a time where you had to wear a mask whenever you were anywhere near anybody else. So yeah, no, it's starting again, really. You can feel it. You can feel it starting. Anyway, I want to show you this because Katie Hopkins. I don't agree with everything she says, but as you probably know, I do like some of the things she says. She's always just so spot on, and I just want to. I can't decide. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I had all my vaccines. Well, I had the first 3. I'm not. They're trying to get me to have another one. I'm not. I keep getting texts saying, "Oh, come and have your vaccine," and like that. No, I've had enough now. I'm not having any more. I've made that decision. I'm just not doing it. And as you probably know, Katie Hopkins is an anti-vaxxer, a complete anti-vaxxer. So I just wanted to show you this, and I just wanted to know what you think, basically. What's people's opinions in general? But anyway, let's watch the video first.
Ask you a favour. If I do it really, really nicely and really, really politely, and you may be someone that can't stand me or anything I say, and you may think I'm a complete conspiracy theorist, and you may have had 55 boosters and at least 15 lots of Pfizer up your bum and 2 lots of Moderna in your eyeball. Like, I get it. We don't particularly get along. But just as one woman to another, one person to another, could I please request that we don't go through the mask shit again? because I'm starting to feel the rumours of it. Do you know what I mean? I'm starting to feel the rumblings of it. I'm starting to see people ask for them at doctors. Could you put your mask on, please? And I'm starting to see more of them in supermarkets and things. And whilst I can totally accept we don't have to get along, I'm now going to ask that you try and feel that same way as well. If you want to wear one, you know, woohoo, you do you. You think you look a bit snazzy with a mask up round your nose, particularly an old mask that you've had for about 6 months now, and you can see the dirt lines on it, particularly on the elasticated bits here where your grubby little fingers with all sorts of infections have gone up round your face 1,000 times. But if you feel like that grubby little patch of old paper on your face is doing something, in a way, go for it. You know what I mean? Like, I always say, whatever you want to do in life, you do it. Whatever you want to be it. Just don't ask me to believe the same crap that you believe, right? I'll applaud you. I'll say, yes, you look good in that mask today, sister. Woohoo, look at your eyes. That mask color, that blue, it really brings out the shitty brown in your eyes. Like, I will cheer you on. I will ping your elastic from behind both ears if it makes you feel good about yourself. I'll even disinfect your trolley if you want me to. If you think that my bugs are going to kill you, I'll disinfect your trolley all day long. But the politest, most well-meant request is, please could you afford others like me the same courtesy? Could you afford me the courtesy of being allowed to think what I like, to live how I like, to do what I want to do? Because I really don't think I can go through that whole masking up crap all over again. Anyway, polite request from me. Hope you have a glorious day.
Yeah. So what do you think? Well, I can see from what I can see from the comments, no one seems really very happy with the vaccines or the masks. Just the thought of going back to it again, but oh, something's coming on in the background. Sorry. Yeah, I'm one of those, as I say, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I had my vaccines, followed every rule. I mean, it was awful, like, with the first of all, we couldn't do Spanish classes for ages, which is how I ended up starting doing Zoom classes and that. And then when we could start doing Spanish classes again, we had to wear masks, which is not ideal when you're actually trying to teach someone Spanish, because they can't see your mouth and you can't see their mouth. For practicing speaking Spanish is not ideal, but we did it. We all did it, didn't we? We had to do it. And then it was great when we didn't have to do it anymore. And now, yeah, it's starting a little bit again. And then when I saw that, that video by Katie, and I realised it must be happening in the UK as well, because it's happening here bit by bit. So I think whether it's just the time of year, I mean, don't forget we're in the winter, so it's likely, isn't it, that COVID, I do know quite a lot of people that have had COVID and that, but of course it's not the same as it was with the strength of it, etc. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that and see what you think. I mean, I must admit, I'm terrified of getting COVID. To touch wood, I've not had COVID ever, or I've never tested positive for COVID anyway. So I don't want it, but I don't want to go back to wearing masks either. It's just horrible. And it's not so bad this time of year, but can you imagine how that was in the summer and that, it was so hot and then you had to wear a mask. And I just felt sorry for like the police, because they were out, they had their full uniform on and then a mask. And they stood, doing traffic stops or whatever in like 40 degrees heat. It must have been awful. Hi, Mal. So, yeah. Well, Rustic Rach, what you're saying, that's what I've had, the text I've had from my Centro de Salud. They keep sending me texts and saying exactly for that, to come and get your vaccine for COVID and flu. And I just keep ignoring it. And then a week later, they send me another text and I just ignore it again. So I'm not having it anyway, so I don't know. think if you're vulnerable, you know, some people are vulnerable, you know, obviously if you're poorly. I saw that Yvonne was saying her carers were wearing them, you know. I think but I agree with Katie in that sense. It's a decision that people have to make individually. I've noticed in the supermarket, you've seen the odd person wearing masks. We don't have to in the supermarket, but I have seen the odd person, you know, there might be a few people scattered through the supermarket wearing masks. So people are, it feels like, I don't know, it just feels like it's all starting again. I hope it's just a winter thing, you know, maybe because winter's the time when people get illnesses, don't they? They get flu, they get a cold, or they get whatever. So hopefully that's it. And yeah, I know of a lot of people that got ill. So yeah, there's people that have had jabs and still got COVID, but then maybe they got it, you know. And I do know people that died of COVID, and I know that it is a horrible, or it certainly was as well in the beginning, this horrible sort of illness. So yeah, I don't know. Just don't want to go through that again. But anyway, I just wanted to play that and see what you think. I can see, you know, most people. Oh, Mello, thank you so much. That's kind. Thank you, Mello, for the super sticker. It is a conflicting subject, Rini, and it's like Brexit, isn't it? It's something that divided people. You know, people arguing about it, fighting about whether someone should wear a mask or shouldn't wear a mask. You know, oh God, the thought of going back to all that again, it just awful. Thank you, Mello. That's very kind. So anyway, I just wanted to see what you thought. Is your dad okay now, Mel? Oh, is he still in hospital? I didn't realise he was still in hospital, but he's okay. Good. Yeah. That's it. You know, I don't know. I don't know what the. We didn't have AstraZeneca here. That's quite frowned upon here. We had Moderna, I think. The vaccine we had is. You're vulnerable, you're cis, and you're right. So, Katrina, are you wearing a mask when you go out now still, or are you not? You said you bit. I mean, I've been terrified. I was terrified of getting it. I really was, because I do have mild asthma, you know, and it's nothing. I mean, certainly living in Spain, it was worse when I was in the UK. But I was scared of getting it because I used to get a lot of bronchitis. But since I gave up smoking about 5-6 years ago, I've never had bronchitis since. So, yeah. No, I think it was the AstraZeneca, Desi, that was the bad one. But I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows the truth of it? You know, people talk about big pharma, don't they? That it's all just I just don't know. The total honest truth is I just have no idea. I had those first 3 vaccines. I was glad to have them, to be honest. You know, there's countries in the world where people wanted to have the vaccine and they couldn't have it. You know, I just don't want any more. Just don't want any more. Yeah. Hi, Agatha Crispy. Oh, whooping cough. Oh, yeah, they talk about this 100-day cough, aren't they? That's what my sister was telling me. She'd had the 100-day cough. This is, you know, because she's just had a cough for so long. I haven't had that either, but yeah. Oh, I don't know. You just sort of, I mean, at the end of the day, in winter, people get ill, don't they? That is just something that happens. You know, viruses go round, bronchitis, flu. It always has. It always has, to be fair. So, you know, is it different now? Is it more now, or has it always just been the same? It's just that we talk about it more. I do think there's a lot in, you know, it's whatever the news focuses on, isn't it, that we think is, you know, it's always been. I remember, you know, when I was young, it was always in the winter people would get ill at the end of the day. So I don't know. I don't. Anyway, so I just thought I'd mention that. It was just something that video I caught today of Katie's, and it just made me think about it. And I just wanted to see what people thought about it. But it just seems, you know, yeah, it doesn't stop you getting COVID, as Ali says, but I suppose it's supposed to not make it as virulent, but I don't know. Okay, so we're going to move on now. We're going to move on to this guy, this Robert Trigg, and what connection could his case show us with the Nicola Bulley case? Now, first of all, I'm going to read to you. I'm just going to read out to you what happened with this guy. Now, he was a chef. Quite often, there was a documentary out about him not long ago, and I've been meaning to do this video for ages, but of course it was Christmas and New Year, etc. But I wanted to talk about him because as I was watching the video, there was just something that stopped me in my tracks that the policeman said about this Petechial. Well, you'll know what I mean. This Petechial hemorrhaging in the eyes, which of course Nicola Bulley had. And that caused a bit of a stir, didn't it? Like when we were reading that from the inquest, that she had these hemorrhages, because this petechial hemorrhaging is really unusual in drownings. It's not unheard of, but it is so unusual, and it is more common in other kinds of deaths, let's say. So first of all, I just want to read you the story of Robert Trigg and what happened to the not only two unfortunate women that sort of crossed his path, but he had a long history of domestic violence or violence against women, and he should never have been out free, really, even to kill the first of his girlfriends, never mind the second one. Anyway, so he had a history of violence towards women, and he'd had a relationship in 2002, which is with a woman called Rebecca Alcorn, and she had ended that relationship after nearly a decade because of his drinking and violent outbursts, and they had a daughter together. He then went into a relationship with a woman called Susan Holland, which deteriorated again because of his drink-fueled rages. In 2003, he accused her of sleeping with a neighbour, and he beat her, kicking her in the head and face. And apparently, afraid of his own behaviour, he called the police. He called the police himself, and he said, "I'm going to kill her. You need to arrest me." And she spent 3 weeks in hospital, and he was convicted of assault. So this is the kind of man he is. This is the kind of man he was before he ever killed a woman. He had a long history of violence towards women. I think just as I'm talking about him, I'm going to put his picture up so you can see him. So apparently he looks like someone who works in the takeaway opposite Rini, but you know, he's so he looked like he had one relationship after another. So he must have been he was, you know, he could find women easy enough. You know, women must have liked him, some unknown reason. But he would, and it was drink really. So he'd have these drink-fueled rages. But you know, yeah, he had relationship after relationship. So he had no problems in finding women to have relationships with. So there he is. I'll leave that on while I read to you what he did. So already he's got already by 2003, he had a history of violence towards women. Then in October 2014, he met Deirdre Loveridge, and he began a relationship with her. And his jealousy led to that relationship breaking down. He sent her more than 100 abusive messages and phone calls. And in November 2016, he was convicted of harassment and he was given a restraining order. And she was so terrified of him, she left the area. So we can see a pattern here. So this is, he's always, every relationship that he had, there was a problem. Anyway, then in August 2016, he entered another relationship with another woman, Caroline Yardwood. But this relationship also ended because of his jealousy. He sent her many abusive texts and voicemail messages. On 21st of December, he turned up drunk at the homeless charity shop where she worked. He shouted insults and abuse before grabbing her by the arm and pushing her in the chest. He followed her back into the back room of the shop and pushed her, causing her to fall into a door. He was arrested and he later pleaded guilty to assault, harassment and racially aggravated harassment. And he was jailed for 12 weeks. So he's a charmer, isn't he? He's like real nice guy. And this is the problem when you meet somebody, probably when women met him, they didn't know about all this history of this. So he had a history of abusing women. But of course, each new relationship that he got into, I suppose they did not know about it when they first got into the relationship. Now, it seems that he was, quite a charmer with women because even friends of the two women that he went on to actually murder, they were still friends with him. Like women liked him. So he obviously had these two sides. Anyway, so Caroline Devlin, she was the first woman that he murdered. And this was the woman that he murdered, but did not initially it was not thought of as a crime. So they met in 2003. She was Scottish, and neighbours described their relationship as volatile and again said that Robert Trigg had angry outbursts while he was drunk. And after one outburst, Caroline said, "I won't be here for my 40th birthday." So she was obviously terrified of him, but she stayed with him, unfortunately. Anyway, Bridget Benga, who was a close friend of Caroline, she described how she had become withdrawn and lost her spark. And they made a pact. Her and the two women made a pact together 3 weeks before Caroline's death. They made a pact to say that they would look after each other's children if anything happened. Just, so she was expecting something to happen, but unfortunately she stayed with him and the worst did happen. So what happened was one morning, it was Mother's Day, I believe, or was that the other lady that he murdered where it was Mother's Day? Yeah, no, this one was Mother's Day. And he went and told her daughter, her 10-year-old daughter, you better check on your mum because there's something wrong with her, and sent her 10-year-old daughter in to find her mother dead on the bed. And he didn't call an ambulance. He left the children to call an ambulance. And she was originally, after the post-mortem, her death was ruled as being due to an aneurysm. So that was the coroner's report. So, they're not always right. These autopsy reports, they're not always correct, are they? I mean, I'd not really realised until the Nicola Bulley case how difficult it is to establish a cause of death sometimes. I think sometimes it's probably straightforward and it's a straightforward cause of death, and then other times it's not, and it's not exactly a guessing game because they'll find something. But this poor woman, it was decided that she died of an aneurysm initially. Anyway, there was a dispute in the autopsy between the police and the coroner because the police refused to pay, and I do think a lot of it's to do with money in that. The police refused to pay for a home office pathologist. They only wanted a routine examination performed. As the circumstances around her death were unexplained, the pathologist wanted a home office pathologist to do a more thorough examination, which now that, of course, Nicola did have, didn't she? The home office pathologist was called in, Alison Armour. She was called in to do a more in-depth examination, but I still think, you know, it was you know, it's very confusing, isn't it? When we've seen the inquest results or the post-mortem results, it's not straightforward, is it? And I think drowning is quite a difficult death to ascertain. Anyway, so there was a state of distrust between the county pathologist and the police force to do with previous requests to do with deaths in unexplained circumstances. So they had some history there of not agreeing with things. So, you know, it didn't bode very well, did it, for Caroline's autopsy? Anyway, her post-mortem was carried out 4 days after her death because of this dispute. However, the woman, the next woman that was murdered by Robert, her death, her post-mortem was performed 2 days after her death. So nothing happened. It was found to be death by an aneurysm. Robert was free to, you know, just carry on and meet more poor women. And then, because he had this alcohol problem and he was attending an alcohol rehabilitation centre, and he met in 2010, he met Susan Nicholson at the alcohol rehabilitation centre. And they started dating in November and he moved into her flat in December. So just 2 months later, he moved in with her. Now, her neighbour, Hannah Cooper, saw Susan suffering from injuries on 4 occasions, and she did contact the police to report different fights. In March 2011, Robert was cautioned for punching Susan in the face after an argument. And then in April 2011, the neighbour Hannah Cooper received a phone call from Robert Trigg to say, "It's Sue, I think she's dead." He then left the flat. He went to a nearby shop to get cigarettes. He phoned his older brother Michael, and then that's when he'd phoned. So he'd done all that before he phoned the neighbour. He didn't phone 999. He phoned Hannah Cooper, the neighbour, and she called 999. So just in the months building up to Susan Nicholson's death, police had been called to the flat 6 times after 999 calls. And just 2 days before her death, he was cautioned for punching her in the face. It's awful, isn't it? I don't know why Susan stayed with him, but she did. And unfortunately, it resulted in her death. Anyway, so first of all, the inquest into her death, Susan Nicholson's death, ruled that she had died after he had rolled onto her while they slept on a sofa. So this was the story he told, that he had been asleep on the sofa next to her, and he's a big guy, and he said that he'd rolled over onto her and sort of squished her, really. And the first inquest upheld that. And during the inquest, Robert Trigg said that they had slept on the sofa together about 40 times. And he then sold his story to a magazine in which he reiterated his claim that it was an accidental death. So he's getting away. He's literally getting away with murder. This guy's already got away with 1 murder, and now he's killed another woman. He's saying that he's just rolled over on her and killed her by accident, and he sold his story to a magazine. Anyway, the parents, Susan Nicholson's parents, Peter and Elizabeth, were very suspicious of him, and they said that the sofa was too small for people to sleep on, for two people to sleep on, and they did not believe that this is what had happened. It was just an accident while they were sleeping on the sofa. And they set up a campaign to get, the inquest reopened, etc., which finally was successful. And Robert Trigg was arrested, and he pled innocent. His trial lasted 10 days. And anyway, some new pathological evidence came up. The pathologist said that Caroline Devlin, so this is the first lady who died, who was originally said that she died of an aneurysm. The pathologist then must have revisited the evidence and said that she had in fact died as a result of a blow to the back of the head. And he found also then that Mrs. The second lady had been suffocated, and that was because of this hemorrhaging in the eyes. So anyway, he was finally convicted of the manslaughter of Caroline Devlin. That was the first woman that died. And he was convicted of the murder of Susan Nicholson, the second woman who died. And he still pleads innocent, but he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years. And then there was a report, like an investigation, independent investigation into Thames Valley Police, who were the police force that had dealt with the case. And it concluded that Sussex Police missed opportunities when they were investigating the deaths of Caroline Devlin and Susan Nicholson. Anyway, so the good news basically is he's in prison. But what I wanted, what particularly interested me was that he got, it was nearly 10 years before he actually was, prosecuted. So what I want to look at now is that, because this documentary that was made about him was just so interesting. You just cannot believe that somebody could get away with that for, is it that the police just don't want to investigate? Is it money? This is a guy, he's not a guy that had surely once they even looked into his past and saw that he had a history of violence towards women. I mean, that's a bit of a red flag, really, isn't it? For God's sake, it's not as if he was like some saint who had no previous convictions or no previous history of violence towards women. This man had spent his whole life being violent towards women. And it took the death of 2 women to actually get him put away finally. I mean, at least he is put away. You can't go and do it again. But so here they are, the 2 ladies. It just seems incredible to me that he could, all right, once somebody does it, people make mistakes, they do silly things, and if they, people can be rehabilitated, but not when they keep on doing it over and over again. And these 2 women have died because nobody did anything about this guy. Nobody did anything about him. And then when he finally actually murdered 2 women, the police just looked the other way. It's just awful, isn't it? Anyway, let's have a look at this. Let me just make sure you're all okay. You're all okay. Exactly, Mal. Areas of learning, they've learnt lessons. Sometimes I just think, How many more are there out there like this? How many people are there out there that have literally got away with murder? You know, because we only hear about the ones that are finally caught. Are there loads of people out there, you know, this is just Britain, you know, you could magnify that around the world, really. Is it, you know, how many people are out there because the police can't be bothered investigating, or, you know, they haven't got family that will put pressure on them, or the victims don't have family that will put pressure on, etc., to the police, because, you know, that will feel that there's something wrong. How many are there? Just wonder, don't you? Just, I don't know. You just think, how many of these kind of men, or women even, I mean, you know, how many people are out there literally getting away with murder? You just wonder, don't you? Okay, so let's have a look at this. I just want to show you the bit of the documentary where the police chief is talking, where they finally realised about these hemorrhages. And I'm presuming I'm allowed to use it. I don't know. You just don't know. I've given up with YouTube. You just can't tell what you're allowed to use or what you're not allowed to use. So let's just go back a little bit. So this is the coroner, I think. So he's a good coroner. There are some good coroners out there, you know. You just think, God, because I've heard of coroners before not being happy with, you know, pathology results or what the police have said. You know, I have heard, you know, you do get good ones as well as bad ones, like Mr. Aidley. Yeah. Now, Nicola Bully had a lot of these, remember, in her eyes. And, you know, that was quite a thing. So it's very unusual in drowning. And like the guy's saying, it's unusual in passive smothering, you know, like accidental, if you like, smothering. Let me just look at that again. Let's just look at that again, what he says. So there you go. So he felt that these petechial hemorrhages were more fitted with enforced airway obstruction as opposed to accidental airway obstruction. So it just makes you think, doesn't it? You know, is it possible that post-mortem, you know, well, we know we've all sort of seen the discrepancies in Nicola's post-mortem, you know, even not being a pathologist, just from what you can find out, there's sort of discrepancies in there, apart from the bruising on her body. And then there's these petechial hemorrhages. And then there was the water in the lungs didn't quite seem right, you know, to what it should have been, etc. It just makes you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, will anyone ever give another opinion? Because of course it needs the family to, you know, I can't tell them to, you know, give another opinion. You know, if they do that, if they got somebody else to give an opinion, it would have to come from the family. And then you think, well, the family don't seem to be interested, so maybe not. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. So when they realised that he had murdered Sue, they went back and reinvestigated the death of Caroline. Because the other thing in both the cases as well was not him who rang 999. Anyway, he's been found guilty. Yeah. So because of this, then they reinvestigated the original death, if you like. They put it together, thank God. You know, sometimes the police do put things together and do, you know, something does come of things, and it did in this case. But because of that hemorrhaging, and that's why I think it's significant. Because when I was watching it and I saw the police guy saying that, I just thought, oh my God, because that is this hemorrhaging that Nicola had. You know, so what do you think? Oh, you couldn't see it. Oh, hang on. Right, okay, let me do it again. I'm not sure why you couldn't see it. I thought, I probably didn't press it right. Sorry. Right, let me just. Right, let me go back a bit. Let's try again.
Well, then I was blown away by the fact that they said, oh, and there's another thing. He'd had a previous partner, Caroline Devlin, who had died in not dissimilar circumstances some 4 years before. Well, that was, if you like, the icing on the cake. The first step was to get a forensic pathologist report from a top forensic pathologist, Dr. Nat Carey, someone I've worked with, and someone who obviously is known to be one of the greatest experts, certainly in this country, if not the world.
In late 2014, Dr. Nat Carey re-examined the original post-mortem findings with staggering results.
The most significant finding of Nat Carey was in relation to what are known as petechial hemorrhages. They are burst or broken small blood vessels that appear in the eyes or on the skin in a kind of small pinprick, not very big, sometimes pink or purple, but they're an indication of asphyxiation or when someone can't breathe. And he felt that this wasn't consistent with simple passive smothering. So in other words, had Robert Trigg overlaid Sue Nicholson, even if she was in a heavy, deep sleep, and under the influence of alcohol, one would expect some kind of reaction to open that airway, because the person would be aware that actually they weren't able to breathe. He felt most readily fitted with enforced airway obstruction as opposed to accidental airway obstruction. In layman's terms, Nat Carey believed that Sue Nicholson's head had been deliberately forced down into the fabric of the sofa, whilst at the same time the body was laid on top of Sue, pushing the chest down. So the combination of the compression of the chest and forcing the head, blocking the airways, was sufficient to cause her death. Quite simply, Robert Trigg had murdered Sue Nicholson.
Right, let's just see. Now, we didn't see it the first time. Let's just watch that again.
They combined that with the knowledge that he had been abusive to her, and the fact that he didn't call the police.
Yeah, I think we need an ambulance.
And to them, the most obvious inference from all that was that he killed her. And so they couldn't understand why it was that the police simply seemed to go with his account, which is he said it was an accident, and they seemed to buy into that.
Yeah, and why did the police believe him straight away? Because he had a history of violence. I mean, you know, you could understand it if he was some exemplary citizen, you know, with no record, nothing on his. But he did. He had this specific. He had a long history of violence towards women. But the police just accepted it with the first. Well, both the women initially. The police just accepted it. He said that he'd smothered them by accident, and they just went, "Oh, okay." I mean, for goodness sake, did they not look into his background? You know, why did they believe him so readily? Is it that just that they couldn't be bothered investigating, or I just, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
They met me. They had, bearing in mind that the death was in 2011, they met me in, I think, 2015. And they had gone down every possible avenue in order to try and get justice for their daughter. They were also deeply tortured by the fact that no one was listening to them. And the Sussex police just refused to charge him, and they couldn't understand why. And we looked at the evidence that we had, and my conclusion to them was, this sounds like a very strong case, a very strong inference that she was murdered, and I agreed with that. Well, then I was blown away by the fact that they said, oh, and there's another thing. He'd had a previous partner, Caroline Devlin.
Yeah. So the coroner was thinking that the second murder seemed like might be a murder. The family were putting pressure on, saying, you know, they didn't believe that it was an accident, blah, blah, blah. But he didn't know about the other woman then. Then he found out that he'd had a previous partner that the same thing had happened to. I mean, for goodness sake, you know, it's like, how many clues do the police need before they realise that there's something not right? How many clues do they need, for God's sake?
Who had died in not dissimilar circumstances some 4 years before. Well, that was, if you like, the icing on the cake. The first step was to get a forensic pathologist report from a top forensic pathologist, Dr. Nat Carey, someone I've worked with, and someone who obviously is known to be one of the greatest experts, certainly in this country, if not.
Well, we'd like to get him on Nicola Bulley's case, wouldn't we, this Nat Carey? Maybe if somebody looked at it again, you know, it'd be nice to have a second person either confirm or not the autopsy finding.
Not the world.
In late 2014, Dr. Nat Carey re-examined the original post-mortem findings with staggering results.
The most significant finding of Nat Carey was in relation to what are known as petechial hemorrhages. They are burst or broken small blood vessels that appear in the eyes or on the skin in a kind of small pinprick, not very big, sometimes pink or purple, but they're an indication of asphyxiation or when someone can't breathe. And he felt that this wasn't consistent with simple passive smothering. So in other words, had Robert Trigg overlaid Sue Nicholson, even if she was in a heavy, deep sleep and under the influence of alcohol, one would expect some kind of reaction to open that airway, because the person would be aware that actually they weren't able to breathe. He felt most readily fitted with enforced airway obstruction as opposed to accidental airway obstruction. In layman's terms, Nat Carey believed that Sue Nicholson's head had been deliberately forced down into the fabric of the sofa, whilst at the same time the body was laid on top of Sue, pushing the chest down. So the combination of the compression of the chest and forcing the head, blocking the airways, was sufficient to cause her death. Quite simply, Robert Trigg had murdered Sue Nicholson.
Yeah, so finally, you know, some action had to be taken, because now the expert pathologist had said, you know, because of these petechial hemorrhages, the same petechial hemorrhages that Nicola had. The problem with the Nicola case is, though, you know, the family are not taking this further, so they must be happy with the verdict, mustn't they? So is it because, are they, you know, it's a bit sort of beyond me, because I think if that was my daughter, I would want to know what happened. But I don't know, they don't seem to want to go any further with it.
The Skeltons were absolutely delighted. For 4 or 5 years, they've been labouring under the idea that they're mad and that the world doesn't believe them. And suddenly they've got this top pathologist who's saying, no, common sense says that this doesn't make sense, but more importantly, that it was a deliberate suffocation of somebody by pushing them down to the sofa.
So, yeah, so those hemorrhages are normally a sign of suffocation. So, you know, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think we will ever know what actually really happened to Nicola? I don't know. Or maybe, you know, I mean, it's not unheard of in drowning. You know, we've looked at that before in videos. But it's so rare. And then, of course, added on to what, you know, as I often say in the Nicola Bulley case, it's not just one thing. If she had those petechial hemorrhages and that was the only thing that was strange, that in itself probably is not enough to think that there's something more to it. It's everything else. It's, you know, so many things, and you add all those things up and you just think it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up, and it doesn't make sense. So, you know, it's I find it very it's very depressing, actually, isn't it? Because you feel like, you know, when you feel convinced that there's something, but you feel that it's probably never going to come out, the whole thing. But anyway, we'll see. No, but anyway, there you go. Whatever floats your boat, I suppose. Okay, sorry, I'm waffling on. So I'm going, and it's been a funny old day. I'm just going to go to bed, and then tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow is another day. So yeah, it's very sad going to that funeral this morning. It was just, you know, we went back to the house like for a little bit of a wake, if you like, and that's where I drank too much wine. You know, just got caught up in the sort of thing of it being a funeral, etc. It was just very sad because this particular couple, the husband who's died, they've not been in Spain very long. They came here, they bought a house, they've done it all up, they've just finished doing it all up. And, you know, this poor guy is not going to get any, you know, he's gone, sort of it. So it's just such, I feel a bit sort of weirdy today and philosophical. Anyway, oh, thank you. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Leslie Ash. She had that problem. She had her lips. It went wrong, didn't it? That's what I'd be scared of. It's bound to go wrong. Oh. So anyway, night. I'm sorry, I'm a bit depressing. I'll do a more cheerful one next time. I've had a funny day. So take care. look after you, because you are the most important person. If you don't look after yourself, you can't look after anybody else. And yeah, spend some time on yourself, pamper yourself, you know. And life is so short. It is short, and you just never know the moments. You've got to make the best of everything, haven't you? And until I see you again, may your God go with you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you. Bye.